Howdy, mates. Good afternoon. How are we all doing? It is Saturday, February 4th, 2023. Just trying to keep track of my dates because sometimes they all run into one another. So I'm actually visiting by the Gulf today, which I haven't visited the Gulf in a few days. So it's, always, of course, a pleasure to see her. But anyway, where I'm at in particular, amidst even the development, we're actually at St. Armands Key, or this is also known as Lido Beach, which, quite frankly, as many times as I've been in Florida, I've never actually, I can't say I've actually visited this beach before. But I tell you what, though, I think some of this sand that is here is not entirely natural, just because it's so fine and it's so reflective, which I think some natural sand doesn't really behave that way. But then again, I could be wrong. Perhaps it is natural, for all I know. Hold on a second, there's a group of people that's about to pass. I don't want them to be in the film. Alright, so back to what I was saying. So right here, you can see quite of a demonstration of sand dunes. Pardon me. So, this brings up a particular term, for those of you who may not be as familiar. You know how when you're right up on the water, you notice that there's a bunch of seaweed that lines up along the coastline? Well, there actually is a term for that. It is something known as a wrack. So it's W-R-A-C-K, a wrack line. And this wrack line that I speak of is actually a haven for a lot of our microorganisms, whether it be plankton or even mole crabs. So very small marine creatures or organisms. Hence the point. So in a sense, with the seaweed and then the microscopic organisms, or just very small, still visible to the eye, it essentially starts the food chain, which is then very crucial for a bunch of our shorebirds. You could say right now we're at the time of the year where there is some nesting that occurs. And for another, we do have a bunch of migratory birds down here too. So some examples that I can think of right off the top of my head can include snowy plovers, piping plovers, red knots, which are actually considered to be a threatened species, willets. Those are just a couple to name off. Now, that being said, gosh dang it. Alright, I just stepped on a sand spur. Those really suck. They're even worse than stepping on a Lego. So these birds that I speak of, since they travel quite a good ways, a couple of 1,000 miles, as far north as Canada, this wrack line that I speak of is actually very crucial to serving as a food source, given how far they do travel. So, essentially all of this wrack that I speak of, not all of it is consumed. And so, there are indeed seeds that are contained in this wrack. So eventually it gives an opportunity for some different plants to sprout, such as golden beach creeper, sea oats. There's some beach creeper over there, sea grapes, or for another, I think I saw an example of it. Maybe not. Oh yes, the Ilex glabra, which I mentioned about nearly 2 weeks ago, which produces that dark berry. So, that being said, these migratory birds that I was speaking of, they need to have a natural beach in order for them to nest and survive. And so this really gives you a feel of a natural beach, how it's supposed to be. So I think already I'm liking this beach much better because it's not as interrupted. Now, not to necessarily diss on Siesta Key, it's just Siesta Key is a lot more developed. So I'm not as, I'll be honest with you, I'm not as big of a fan. Sorry I presented my opinion there. But anyways, you need to have this. And for another, these plants that we're seeing, they're essentially allowing this barrier island to exist a little longer. Because given with some of their root systems that are all intertwined and connected, it actually allows the sand to have a better chance for anchoring. And it's not only important for shorebirds either. It's also significant for even our sea turtles, too. In which right now we're past it, but as we get into May, the sea turtles will be back once again. So, alright, you guys, I figure since I'm hitting about 7 minutes, and now you get to have a brief view of the glorious Gulf, I figure this is a good point to wrap up. So, alrighty. Journey on a Journey is once again onwards. Take care, folks. See ya.